All right, Chapter 2, Lesson 2 is percents and fractions. Now, for the warm-up, it says, on Friday, 65% of the students at Plainview Middle School brought a hot lunch, and the rest of the students packed their lunch. What fraction of the students packed their lunch? So, the first thing we need to know here is that 65% of the students bought lunch. So if 65% of the students bought lunch, how do I find out how many brought lunch? Very good. From 100%, right? Because 100% is everybody, correct? So we have 100%, and we're going to subtract the 65%, and that's going to give us 35%. So 35% of the students brought their lunch, right? So now, a percent is always per 100. Percent means per 100, right? So that means that this 35% is 35 per 100. So that's 35 out of 100. So when I have 35 out of 100 written as a fraction, that would be 35 over 100. Okay? And now we can simplify 35 hundredths by dividing by 5. Very good. And we'll divide the numerator and the denominator by 5. And we end up with 7 over 20. Is everybody clear? So 7/20ths of all of the students at the middle school brought their lunch. So here is percents as a fraction. Please make sure you write down your heading and this definition. So a percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100, which is what we just did in the warm-up. It compares a number to 100. Here, an example, 45% means 45 out of 100, and we write that 45 over 100. And then here are the picture models. Now, to write a percent as a fraction, first we write the percent as a rate per 100, and then you simplify. In other words, you write the percent as a fraction over 100, and then you simplify. So for example 1, it says we want to write 50% as a fraction in simplest form. So again, 50% means 50 out of 100. So if we write 50 out of 100 as a fraction, that's 50 over 100, and then this is the fraction that you will simplify. So we simplify 50 over 100 to 1/2. For example 2, it says in a recent survey, 55% of cell phone owners said they text message. What fraction of cell phone owners is this? So we're going to take that 55%, that's 55 out of 100 because it's percent. Percent means per 100. So here we have 55 over 100, and then we can simplify by dividing by 5, and we get 11/20ths. So 11/20ths of cell phone owners text. All right, so let's do these got it problems. So here we want to write each percent as a fraction in simplest form. Okay, so here we have for problem A, 75 over 100. Or 75%, and written as a fraction, that's going to be 75 over 100. Now we have our fraction, now we can simplify it. And here we can simplify by dividing by, very good. We can do better than 5, right? But if you don't see that you can divide by 25, you can start with something lower, okay? So here we can divide by 25 in the numerator and the denominator, and we end up with 3/4. So 75% written as a fraction is 3/4. How about letter B? That's 90%. So 90% written as a fraction would be 90 over 100. Very good. Now, I can simplify by dividing by 10. Very good. We can divide by 10 here, and we can divide by 10 there. Numerator and denominator. So 90 divided by 10 is 9, and 100 divided by 10 is 10. Very good. Now you guys remember that trick that I showed you when you have a zero, when both numbers end in zeros? Remember I told you that you can just cross these out? And that's the same thing as dividing by 10, right? So if you wanted to do that, you see you end up with 9/10 again. All right, so 38% written as a fraction is 38 over 100, and then we can simplify by dividing by 2, and we end up with 19/50ths. All right, example 3 says the table shows the percent of each movie type rented during a month. What fraction of the rentals were action movies? So here we're just going to look at the table, and we see that action movies is 35%. So written as a fraction, 35 over 100. And then we can simplify by dividing by 5, right? Dividing by 5, and we end up with 7/20. So 7/20 of all of the movies is an action movie. Okay? Did I need to know how many movies there were? No, because they're not asking me any specifics, right? They just want the percent. Got it? All right, so let's do letter D. Here, it says write the fraction of rentals that are horror movies. Okay, so what percent were horror movies? 5%. Written as a fraction, 5% is 5 over 100. Very good. I'm going to start with just writing 5%. Right, 5%, and that's equal to 5 over 100. And then I can simplify. So I'll divide by 5 in the numerator and the denominator. Very good. And we end up with 1/20. Very good. So 1/20 of all of the movies rented in that month were horror movies. So now we're going in the other direction. So now we're going from fractions to percents. From fractions to percents. Now here, write this rule down. To write a fraction as a percent, you're going to find an equivalent ratio with 100 as the denominator. Okay? So just like we said, percent means per 100. In order for us to change a fraction to a percent, we first need to write it as a fraction with a denominator of 100. So for example 4, it says write the fraction 6/8 as a percent. Well, I can't make 8 into 100, right? So here is where we're going to scale back and scale forward. So again, this is similar, very similar to our ratio tables. Is everybody clear? So here, 6/8 we can scale back by dividing by 2, right? So we can divide by 2 here, and we can divide by 2 there, and that's going to give us the 3/4. Now that we have 3/4, can I make the denominator to 100? Yeah. So 4 times 25 gives me 100. So 3 times 25 gives me 75. So now I have a fraction that is written as with a denominator of 100, so that's 75 over 100, and that numerator is your percent. All right, so let's do problem E. Here it says write the fraction 9/12 as a percent, and of course this is what it looks like in picture form. And we want to write 9/12 as a percent. And again, when you look at this, can I change 12 into 100? No. So I'm going to scale back Very good. So we're going to divide by, good, divide by 3. So when I divide by 3, or simplify by dividing the numerator and the denominator by 3, we get 3 over 4. So 3/4. Now, can I change the denominator to 100? Yes, by multiplying by 25. So here we're going to multiply by 25, and we end up with a fraction 75 over 100. And now that we have our fraction with a denominator of 100, we can see that that numerator is our percent. So this is equal to 75%. All right, for example 5, it says Mitch made 12 out of 40 shots during the championship game. So 12 out of 40, written as a fraction, is 12 over 40. 12 over 40. Now, once again, we can't make that 40 into 100, so we need to scale back. So here, we scaled back by dividing by, you see it? 4. We divided by 4, right? So here, we divide by 4 here, and we divided by 4 here. That's the scaling back part. That's the simplifying. So that gives us 3/10. So now, with the 3/10, can I make that 10 into 100? Yes, just by multiplying times 10. So we multiply the denominator by 10 to get 100, which means that we have to multiply 3 times 10 to get 30. So our fraction is 30 over 100, which is 30%. Is everybody clear? All right, so problem F says Elena spelled 19 out of 25 words correctly. We want to know what percent of the words did Elena spell correctly. So 19 out of 25 we can write as a fraction, 19 over 25. So we have 19 over 25. Now, can I make 25 into 100? Yes, and I didn't even need to scale back, right? So now I'm just scaling forward. We're just going to multiply times 4. Very good. So we'll multiply the numerator and the denominator by 4, and we get, very good, 76 over 100, which is equal to 76%. Beautiful. And so now I'm going to teach you a little extra thing here. We're going to learn how to solve the percent proportion using cross multiplication. So here, the cafeteria at Middletown Middle School surveyed 575 students about their favorite food. Find the number of students that responded for each of the following. So here, 20% of the 575 students said they like salad best. So here, we're going to set up a proportion, and that formula for the proportion is called, the percent proportion is percent over 100 is equal to the part over the whole. Okay, the part over the whole. So, for the 20%, what we're going to do, we're going to write that percent over 100. So we're going to write that percent as a fraction. So that's going to be 20 over 100. And that's going to be equal to the part over the whole. So the whole thing is the 575 students. That's all of the students. So that's 575 that goes in the denominator. And the part of the students that like salad best is what we're solving for. So now we're going to cross multiply. And when we cross multiply, we're going to multiply the 20 times the 575, and that's going to go over here. And we're going to multiply the 100 times the x, which goes over here. So we end up with 100x is equal to 20 times 575. So let's see, 575 times 2, that's 10, carry the 1, 14, 15, carry the 1, and that's 10, 11. And then of course I have to put in that 0 for the 20. So over here we're going to have 11,500. Now, to get this x by itself, we are going to divide by the number that's in front of the x. So we're going to divide by 100. So divide by 100 there. And if I divide by 100 on one side of the equal sign, I have to do the same thing on the other side. Keep the balance. So here, 100 over 100, that's equal to 1. So 1 times x is equal to x. And then on the other side, here, remember I told you about those zeros. Look, we can cross out 2 of the zeros. So we're going to cross out those zeros, and we'll cross out those zeros. And what we end up with is 115. So 115 students liked salad best.